Hello and welcome to ZalthoLIVE, the podcast featuring Zen Buddhist Monk Claude AnShin Thomas, who will share with you his life experiences that includes not only military combat, personal violence, and addiction, but also healing, transformation, and the ongoing joy of everyday life. Please enjoy listening.
Grace. There you go. All right.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
I wonder if you're willing to share your current vulnerability with us.
Sure. Be glad to.
Thank you.
Yes, for me to do this is to be intensely vulnerable. To take your questions and really respond to them, not in a way that I think will necessarily make you happy or will make you satisfied, but to respond as authentically as I can, not with the intention to be antagonistic, not with the intention to be to satisfy you, but to respond as authentically as I can, to reveal myself to you in the ways in which these kinds of questions and my responses to these kinds of questions evoke. Also, it was I tell you, for me, dealing with the police is unsettling. I have okay, here you go, Nicola. I have a nefarious past. You know, I've spent a significant amount of time in and out of jails, and I behaved in ways that I regret. And I somehow have this. Somehow there's still this. I just feel uncomfortable when I go into a police station. Now, there's this piece of me that thinks that I'm going to go in there and they're going to go, we've been waiting for you, you know. But in this case, and I had those kinds of fears. They're not fears that are grounded in any kind of current reality, but they're still these sort of false. My mind's just creating these fears, and so I just went. You know, together with these fears, I just said, I'm going to go. And if there's some other agenda, I guess I'll just deal with that, you know. But I walked in and it was all quite okay. It was and I met the person who was the contact and liaison for the event, and I was introduced to the chief of police, and then on behalf of Keith, I asked the chief of police, I said, excuse me, I have a really important question to ask you. So why did the Miami Beach police arrest Jim Morrison? He was only exercising his mojo rising. I really asked the chief of police that. And the chief of police looked at me, smiled, and said, you know, I can't answer that question. It was before my time. And so I just bowed to him, you know. And that was a way for me to work with how vulnerable I felt in that circumstance, to see if I could establish some humane connection. And I think that's what's unsettling for me about dealing with the police. It's like active military. It's to handle the responsibilities that are thrust on them, that requires a certain divorce from our own humanity, because we can't be in contact with our humanity and do some of the things and deal with some of the things we have to deal with. That's why I was pretty impressed with how they described their wellness program, how it actually works, I would have to spend more time to see. Those are some. Also, to drive. To drive from here to Miami and then Miami back. There's also a measure of vulnerability in that. I'm on my own, and anything can happen. And I go anyway. I just get in a car and go and say, what are the chances of that? I just have to I just trust. There's a measure of trust that has to go along with the stories that my mind creates out of that sense of vulnerability. Question. Nicola, oh, you're busy today.
Yes. Is it egoistic to want to have children, or is it wrong or something?
That's a personal decision. I always sort of, there's enough kids in the world. There's enough children in the world who don't have parents, who've been abandoned, who've been neglected. This is sort of what my position is on it now. I mean, I have a son, right? But the son, that wasn't a planned event. But I'm ever so thankful for it. And my son and his wife have a daughter, so I have a granddaughter. I never thought they would have children, but that's a real personal decision, and so I wouldn't really interfere in that. But if a person asked me, I would be willing to have a dialogue with them. I dialogue with people about that. I want to go, okay, so what's the point? I mean, what is your motivation to have a child? Because there's so many, I see it happen so many times that children are just accoutrements. Just something, it's like a piece of jewelry or something. It's just another thing, like a new dishwasher, a new car. For some people, it's like that. For some people, children are a way to sort of lock that relationship in, to secure it. There are any number of reasons that people are driven to have children, to fulfill the social contract. Like somehow for me to be something in the world, I need to be married, I got to have kids, I need a job, I need da-da-da. This was terrible for me. I didn't want to be married. I couldn't hold a job after the war. And there wasn't any real life for me before the war. I was in high school. I couldn't hold a job. Didn't make any sense. And children require a lot of care and responsibility. And I wasn't in a position to really do that. Not until I stopped using alcohol and drugs and until I found my way into a spiritual practice. I have some regret about that because I wasn't as available to my son as I would like to have been, and that has its consequences. Although from age 11 forward, I was really available in his life, but I can't change any of that. So it's really an individual choice. It's an individual decision that people have to make, but it's something there needs to be significant thought given to, and hopefully. But I know, like, for people having children, the decision to have a child is a bit like a young man or a young woman deciding to go into the military here. If someone has already decided they want to go into the military, no matter what you say, it's not going to change their mind. They're just going to do it. Regardless of the consequences, they're going to do it. And so when I have the opportunity to speak with people on either one of those decisions, I just make an effort to be as candid as I can about the larger reality. Yeah. Question. Yes, Genrai, and then Kenshin. She's over here, by the way, Kenshin.
From your experience, is it easier to reflect and connect with one's suffering and conditioned behavior by living alone, in a relation, or a family?
What is it? What is it? Kenshin said, "You want to check out your serenity? Go visit your family." I mean, it's through my interactions with others, and it doesn't have to be in those contexts that you described. It doesn't have to be in a relation. It just doesn't have to be just in my interactions with others. Because in truth, I'm never alone. Even if I live alone, I am not alone. Because I have my thoughts, and in the course of the day, I mean, I don't live in a cave. In the course of my day, I interact with all kinds of people, and it's the interactions. It's those interactions that are often the greatest tool to accessing my conditioned nature. Yeah, and I was really surprised at myself on the driving back. I was a lot more relaxed in the car than I have been in the past. Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know where I was. It was somewhere where somebody was driving real close to me. It was in traffic, and they were driving. I couldn't even see their headlights. They were so close. And in the past, I would have gotten really anxious about that and I would have acted aggressively. And all I did this time was I just sort of held up my hand and said, "Hey, back off." And they didn't. So at the first opportunity, I just moved over. So I let them rush up so they could get right behind the car in front. You know? I could just say, "I'm really glad I'm not in their skin because I have been there." Yeah. Yeah, so generally I had a pretty okay time this time in the car. I was a lot more relaxed, and it makes the trip a lot easier. I still find it pretty interesting when I stop at a rest area and I walk. I travel always in rows. I stop at a rest area and I walk into the men's room, and I'm wearing a dress. It's always interesting how most people, they don't overtly react, but I can see the double take sometimes. Like they're trying to figure out, but then because of the nature of the clothes, I think they jump to the conclusion that it's something religious. I think, I'm not wearing a flowery dress. So, questions? Oh yeah, Kenshin. Oh wait, here we go. I'll do this slow, so I know some people have trouble with fast movement.
My question is, I sometimes go to the car wash, and the recent 2 times I've been in one where you're pulled through. Like there's a conveyor belt that pulls you through. Both times, once the car is moving, now all the foam is coming, I get actually panicked because the thing is moving, I can't see anything, and I am a little terrified that usually I actually think something like I'm going to experience physical harm, but it also reminds me of death. So anyway, do you think it's useful to go more often to the car wash?
Hey, okay, so we have to set up a fund. We have to set up a car wash fund, so this will be Kenshin's therapy. No, I think, but it's important. I understand. So, yeah, I sometimes have the sense of claustrophobia, but at that point, I just have to acknowledge that, the chances of that happening right now are pretty slim. This is just look, and within seconds, the water comes and the foam's gone, and I can see, and everything is okay, and if things went sideways, then I would have to act on that. But if I'm in a state of panic and things went sideways, I wouldn't be present enough to act. So I just come back to my breath. That's the example I did with the police and with the Israelis, because the last thing people really want to do is to become still. The majority of people in these circumstances that I engage with, they need to be in action. They can hardly stand to be still. And I know that from my own experience when I first engaged in practice. And through all of the activities, people think they're actually doing something that's helping them. And in fact, it's not really helping them in the long run. I mean, it's only a temporary anesthetic. Question? Okay, Nicola. Oh, you're working hard for the group today. Wow.
Concerning when we getting the instruction for question response, you often say that it's not not for question response, for mindful listening and speech, that it's not a therapy group. But what is a therapy group? What is that?
Well, you're a psychologist. You're practicing to do that. You know the difference between deep listening and mindful speech in a therapy group. There are no leaders in these groups. There's no leaders in the deep listening and mindful speech group. When one speaks, the others listen. There's no challenging. There's no discussion. There's no intervening. It's one speaks, the rest listen. Really listen. That's a big difference. And it's not about deep listening and mindful speech is not about forwarding some so therapists are generally trained in a particular school that has a particular ideology, and this is how they approach from that training is how they approach the individuals or the groups that they are associated with, and this is not the case in a deep listening and mindful speech. And so are you thinking about having a child?
Maybe.
Oh, okay. Look out.
I will discuss it with my therapy group.
Okay, good. That's a good place to take it. Kenshin. Gotta keep turning the computer.
This is going back to the car wash. Follow up. That's what I noticed. While there's all this foam and I'm getting a little antsy, imagine something bad could happen. I don't have the trust that I could deal. Like, let's say physical harm. There's a projectile coming through the windshield. I think I have the doubt that I can physically deal.
And you might not be able to. However, it's just sort of that's self-doubt. Self-doubt is a poison. Now, it's interesting. So I think belladonna is a poison, correct? Yes, belladonna is a poison. However, taken in small doses, it's actually a very helpful medicine. Like narcotics. Narcotics are, in fact, poison. But in small doses, they can be supportive to some people who are in extreme pain. Self-doubt, while important, if I wrap myself around that, I can talk myself into a space where I can't function. I can just let my self-doubt take over. Or I can have self-doubt and just say, okay, if this should happen, I'm just going to respond the best I can. Yeah. But also it's about staying with the breath and coming back to the original. Actually, as you were talking, I'm thinking, okay, so this gives you insight into feelings of powerlessness. It gives you insight into feelings of that you could be harmed. What other circumstances give you access to those feelings? And then how can you create a space for those feelings to exist in those circumstances and not let them control you or dictate to you?
Thank you.
Welcome. Questions?
It's actually time to end.
Okay, last question. Yes, Milko.
AnShin, when you went and spoke with or to the Israeli soldiers and the police, would you say that those were not Dharma talks?
No, they're Dharma talks. They're just not what would be. Every time I speak is a Dharma talk. It's just not technically. It's not technically recognized as a Dharma talk. And this is what I mean. These people who give Dharma talks, there's a certain formula, and it becomes a bit of an ideological or academic presentation. And I'm not so interested in that. The Dharma is something that's alive real time. It's not an academic process. I'm all keen on study. I'm a great advocate on that. When a person is in a position where they can benefit from study, but if a person gets into study too soon or too quickly, they can get really confused, and they can get locked into an ideological approach. I can see that with some. There's a couple of people in this lineage. They on the outside, they were very dedicated practitioners. And then the first time that something out of the ordinary came into their sphere, they disappeared. They abandoned practice. It's just not, they're not present. And so that if my practice is not ideological, then I don't get so quickly drawn away from that, and I'm not interested in. I'm not really interested in sort of standard colloquial Dharma speak. I'm just not. It doesn't move me in some way. So yes, they're Dharma talks. Every time I respond to a question, it's a Dharma talk. Okay, time to bring this to a transition point. Hold your seats till I leave the room. Give Kenshin a few moments of your time. Thank you for all of your hard work. And for those of you who ask questions, thank you so much. I will remind you that the questions that you ask are also teachings for me. That's why I value them so much. They really demand of me to see how study, experience, and application all come to fruition in the response.
Thank you for listening to this episode on ZalthoLIVE. If you would like additional information, please look at the show notes or visit zaltho.org. That's ZALTHO.org. Our work is made possible solely through donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible gift on our website. We wish you well and thank you.